Cian Corla. I want to raise with the Taoiseach the question of HEPA filters in our schools again. Yesterday, the Minister for Health told RT Radio, quote, "The expert group within the HSE has looked at this, namely HEPA filters in schools, in great detail, and its advice to the Department of Education and the Department of Health is that they are not recommended." Exactly what Minister Donnelly was referring to there is not clear. It's not clear from anything that's published on the relevant websites. But the NEFIT expert group on ventilation did recommend, back in March, that HEPA filters would be useful for schools, particularly for winter months when it's not possible to have windows open all day. They said HEPA filter devices may be useful in reducing airborne transmission in spaces with insufficient ventilation. Yesterday, Dr. Kim Roberts, a member of the expert group, spoke at a press conference we organised about our ventilation bill and about the need for HEPA filters in schools. The Department of Education, back in May 2021, said in a certain scenario you should consider a room air cleaner with a HEPA filter. When will the government change its position and invest in HEPA filters in every classroom?
Yeah, but first of all, could I say I've noticed in a lot of the contributions references to the government ended contact tracing, or the government decided this or the government decided that. It was a decision at the time the government did take on the 27th of September in respect of contact tracing, following and in line with recommendations from NEFIT to cease routine contact tracing. So it was a public health advice. Sorry, but you accept it was public health advice through the chair? No, but what I do not accept is the deliberate narrative created by deputies that it was a decision taken without any reference to public health whatsoever, from the very same deputies, through the chair, who will argue consistently the need to adhere to public health advice, not only public health advice, but even more severe public health advice, such as zero COVID and so on. And then when it suits the deputies, they turn it all around and say, anything that they don't like, it's the government, not public health. It was government working on advice from public health took the decision, because at the time, the view was that it was leading to disruption within schools and children being out of school. And you can't have it both ways. And you tend to have it both ways and each and every way every time you come in. And what I would also say is, in terms of the HEPA filtrators and in terms of ventilation, there has been guidance issued to the schools. There was expert groups formed. Their fundamental view, by the way, is that the most important ventilation is fresh air. That's the most basic rule of thumb that they've applied. The costings that people are putting forward varies. Magically, people have come up with 12 million. I've been given an estimate it could be up to 80 million if every single classroom was to be ventilated with a HEPA filter. But again, that can be worked through. What cannot be argued is hundreds of millions have been allocated to our education system for COVID preparedness, and the fact that up to 35,000 CO2 monitors are in every school now, or across schools across the country, and almost all the classrooms and so on. That has been a very important. I've touched base with some schools in respect of this, and they've found them very useful in terms of managing their way through this. And in respect of air filtration in schools, there is a facility there to avail of that, to work with departmental technical people who will advise schools who are in difficulty in relation to ventilation, and will help those schools put in ventilation systems. So that is there, and in the minor capital works programme and so on, there's a sufficiency of capital there for people to have bespoke solutions for their particular school, because every school is different. And the most important advice to give to schools is that, and preschool settings, is that where children are symptomatic, do not send them to school, is the most fundamental advice, where they are symptomatic. Because one of the biggest issues for the last 3 months has been RSV. I keep on saying this in terms of children getting ill and children getting hospitalised. It's been RSV and other respiratory illnesses has been the dominant issue this winter amongst children, which has proved challenging. So the symptomatic advice applies across the board and would be very helpful. Someone said earlier that parents were sending their children with a spoon or two of Calpol, which is not the thing to do, you know. Now, the antigen testing has been introduced, and 8,000 tests were dispatched. I take Deputy Kelly's point. We'll follow through on that, just maybe reflect on that. I think the target now is to get to the Christmas break, recalibrate, review how we deal with the next semester. And the advice we have received this week is from the public health doctors, who are saying that they believe children should reduce their socialisation. Why? Because they showed us graphs yesterday, and they've published these graphs, that that the 5 to 11-year-old are going through the roof, literally speaking, in terms of numbers, or had been for the last number of weeks, and their parents also. And they're the two big bars in the graph where the numbers have gone up. So they want to bring that down, just like we did the rest of the population. If you remember, 2 weeks ago, our public messaging worked, actually, in terms of making the statement, following the advice in terms of returning or working from home, the exhortations to people to reduce their socialisation. That has led to a moderation, a stabilisation of hospital numbers and ICUs, but we're still at too high a level in incidence levels. The same advice now is being applied to children from the public health doctors, that if we can reduce socialisation overall, we could turn that curve the other way down in terms of those case numbers. I didn't probably get to every case, I apologise.